Why would you want the first female president of color to be one of the dumbest people we've ever had in politics?
So, dude, here's another one with Emily fucking Wilson being an idiot, talking about the dumbest people we've ever had in politics. Kamala Harris was near the top of her class. She graduated from law school. She was a DA. Then she was Attorney General of the fifth largest economy in the world and a U.S. Senator. She's so fucking smart. But Emily Wilson, the dumb bitch who said that slavery in Alabama would be the thing, wants to question the intelligence of Kamala Harris.
Who's achieved literally nothing. What a setback for...
She's achieved literally nothing. Like, dude, it's just rage baiting at this point. Like, I think there is something going on, guys. I think there is a type of emotional dysregulation happening where people will say something that causes a bunch of rage, where they'll say something so outrageous, so crazy, so like such a, like just absolute lie bullshit. And then people get furious by the gaslighting and the lying. But I think the person who tells the lie, the person who made everyone furious, is getting off on that. They're saying shit that makes people rage, and then they're seeing the people's rage and all the people being mad and freaking out. It feels good to them. Like people have somehow gotten wired that, you know, causing large amounts of anger in other human beings, it makes them feel good. We talked the other day about Fortnite and how destructive these video games are and the dopamine and shit. And I found this TikTok of this teacher that I really want to share with you guys because I think it's really relevant.
I think that you guys don't know what's going on in education right now. That's fine. Like, how could you know unless you were working in it? But I think you need to know. So here's exactly what it's like right now working in public education. First of all, the kids have no ability to be bored whatsoever. They live on their phones and they're just fed a constant stream of dopamine from the minute their eyes wake up in the morning until they go to sleep at night. Because they're in a constant state of dopamine withdrawal at school, they behave like addicts. They're super emotional, like the smallest thing sets them off. And when you are standing in front of them trying to teach, they're vacant. They have no ability to tune in if your communication isn't packaged in short little clips or if it doesn't have like bright flashing lights. That's actually the way harder part for me than just the outright behaviors, is just being up at the front, talking to a group of kids who have their eyes open, they're looking at me, but they're not there. They're not there. And they have a level of apathy that I've never seen before in my whole career. Punishments don't work because they don't care about them. They don't care about grades. They don't care about college. It's like you are interacting with them briefly in between hits of the internet, which is their real life. I've seen some TikToks recently where teachers are getting a lot of hate, like for not adapting to the kids or punishing them or whatever. And I just gotta say, like, I can tell you with absolute certainty, it is not the teacher's fault. It might be the parents' fault. It might be our capitalistic society's fault, but it is not the teacher's fault.
Did you hear that though? That part where she said from the time they wake up till the time they go to sleep, they are just dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. So the entire time that they're interacting with them, the kids are like addicts in withdrawal. They're in a constant state of dopamine withdrawal. They're super emotional. They overreact to shit, you know, can't handle disappointment and shit. There's no way to hold their attention. But the part that's really interesting is the part that you can't even punish them, like, because it doesn't do anything, because they don't care if you can punish them. They don't care if something's getting ruined. And it really is that addict in withdrawal behavior that I think is what is super concerning. You know, all this talk about schools is right now with kids being on the internet, being on TikTok, being on these crazy high dopamine video games, age 6, 7 years old. There is like no turning back from that. They're fusing their brains into an entire existence being one giant dopamine withdrawal experience. And they're going to be impossible to teach. And not only that, though, the thing she was talking about that over emotional quality, that overreacting sort of thing, that's where a lot of the emotional dysregulation is going to come in. The overwhelming addiction we're thrusting on people with social media and dopamine every 2 seconds. There's no doubt kids are feeling the weight of it, but I'm not even talking about the emotional content, guys. I'm not even talking about the heaviness from like the political climate or the worries about rent. I am talking about purely the mechanism of dopamine injection and kids at 6 years old using smartphones, using TikTok, using certain video games, where aside from the messaging is the pure dopamine addiction. I'm talking about the addiction to a dopamine reward every 5 seconds, where she said you're interacting with them briefly in between hits of the internet. And so I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but go to a methadone clinic. A methadone clinic is a great example because a bunch of addicts are going and they're trying to get methadone so they don't get the dope sickness. Obviously, if you're addicted to heroin, you're addicted to opiates, you get a dope sickness that then if you don't get your dope, you can't function. You are curled up in a ball, vomiting with the shivers, and you feel like you have spiders crawling over your body. You can't even function. You are just miserable for days. So people in that level of addiction are doing heroin not to get high. They're doing heroin to not get sick. Now, they go to a methadone clinic and they're getting methadone, which alleviates that dope sickness, but it's also, they're not putting heroin in their body. So it's presumably helping them get closer to maybe getting off the drug, and there's no risk of OD. They're not going to get a hot shot and end up dead. But if you go to a methadone clinic, the people in there, they're scattered. And they're not scattered because they're stupid or because they're brain damaged or anything like that. They're scattered because when that heroin has you in that level of addiction, the dope sick part, you're constantly traveling between sicknesses. You go from dope sick to dope sick. That's your reality. The withdrawal becomes the normal, and then the getting something to alleviate the withdrawal is like you're now standing in line for the thing to get you out of withdrawal. And so you're no longer living. You are now living to not get dope sick. And that's the perpetual state of withdrawal. And so the people in methadone clinics, they can't focus. It's hard for them to have a conversation. They have a buzz of anxiety that like filters around them that amplifies everything. So when you have somebody in that state, the smallest thing going wrong can produce a huge emotional response because they're very sensitive. Like their nerve endings are like super sensitive. If they have their date planned and one thing goes wrong, it can just derail them to a huge degree. And it's because they're stuck in that perpetual state of withdrawal. And so what this teacher was describing, teaching classes full of young people in a perpetual state of withdrawal from their phone. If kids are using these phones and these iPads from 6 to like 10 years old, by the time they're 10 years old, they're literally dope sick every day from probably TikTok. I mean, TikTok is really the chief offender, and not because the content on TikTok is inherently bad, but it's the mechanism of it, that TikTok is about rewarding you every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. And so it's just going to be really hard. Like, I think if you have a generation of kids that are wiring a dope sickness from internet provided dopamine hits, and that is their baseline, I don't see how they're going to go out in the world and not have like a lot of like emotional meltdowns. And, you know, I mean, I feel like some of the shit we're seeing with Trumpism, these emotional overreactions, a lot of this rage baiting, this sort of rage frenzy kind of behavior, I feel like some of this is possibly getting motivated by people being strung out and extraordinarily emotionally dysregulated. This stuff is happening before these kids are aware of society. The amount of dopamine that feels like a reward at age 6, 7, 8 is setting the foundation for your entire life. I don't know what the long-term ramifications are going to be. There's like a different type of attention deficit that is, you know, regardless of why it's happening, it's like if we move into this and if we have kids and if we turn them into dopamine withdrawal zombies at their earliest ages, it's going to have some type of ramification. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's going to be good. I think that highly emotional thing is the real scary part. And I mean, that's in addition to them being bombarded with that real world political shit and all that other stuff that is probably causing a lot of extra anxiety as well. But you know what's hard about this, guys, is I think some of it is not even a case of bad parents. I think a lot of parents have not dealt with their own trauma. So a lot of parents not having healed any of their own trauma, they have a lot of stressors in their own existence, that a lot of parents are so overwhelmed themselves that the iPad or the phone is like a relief. But yeah, this kind of made me sad because I don't know what our way out is on this. But like, having the phone isn't the issue. The issue we're grappling is the physiological effects that these phones are having on forming brains. When 6 hours on TikTok is the thing that is giving them the dopamine reward, where every day they spend hours on TikTok. Now, anything less than that TikTok level of dopamine doesn't feel like a reward. So now that kid can go hit a home run and he probably doesn't even feel a dopamine boost from hitting a home run because it doesn't provide the TikTok level. But what does provide TikTok level? You know, some video game like Fortnite or crypto gambling. You see what I'm saying? The problem is if TikTok is your baseline, you know, cleaning your room, getting an A, hitting a home run, none of those things are going to feel like an accomplishment. None of them are going to feel good. They're going to feel like, whatevs, right? That's the thing that's scary. When, you know, you're looking at your 7-year-old and you're thinking the only thing that could keep his interest now is if I let him play the crypto gambling slots for an hour. Other than that, he's going to feel like upset and like he's having a horrible time. Because the other thing is eventually when you get used to your dopamine receptors requiring that much dopamine for a reward, now what happens is when you're not getting that level of dopamine, you feel depressed. So now doing regular activities, the kid's going to feel depressed. He's going to clean his whole room or get the first place ribbon, and afterwards he's just depressed or she's just depressed. That's like so heartbreaking, man. It's fucking heartbreaking, dude. It is, because like, dude, like what's going to happen when those kids become adults? I actually was thinking a lot about the content of this video while I was editing it. The anxiety I feel thinking about how that early access to dopamine electronics is affecting kids and how it's being manipulated through propaganda to engage with that over-emotional experience in order to red pill kids, drive them with these hate-fueled agendas. I find that really worrisome, but at the same time, I also know there's an awful lot of hope there too. Just thinking about my own experience, my generation, raised by television, raised by media, we had a lot more access to things that our parents didn't have. Where instead of being raised by adults, we were being raised by these new media influences. And though it came with its problems and it came with certain attention deficit disorders, it also came with an earlier onset of awareness that led to a generation of new adults that focused on healing and a lot of like internal self-work that our parents never had access to. So it's possible that in addition to the dangers, we may have a really bright future here as some of these kids translate that extra awareness and anxiety to the power of even more healing. And so, I don't know. I think maybe that's the future we want to be working towards. Again, guys, thank you for watching. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. You like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.